cut the piece that I need. I need to make sure that this is still big enough. And it is, because this piece here goes down into the base. So I'm going to create a new black line. Right along here. And nobody will ever know but us that that wasn't the original plan. All right, our first layer is done. I'm digging it. It's bright, it's colorful. We need to set this aside to dry. I'm gonna pick this up, move it over, and then we'll get back and start it on the next piece while this is drying. All right, while the other cat is drying, we are going to go ahead and get started on our heart. We're back to the designing, which is the hard part, but we can do this. We know what we've got going with our other one, and we already have our scraps done. If you wanted to break up this bottom piece, you didn't want the whole thing this, just take your Sharpie and create a new section. All right. All right, this heart is cut. I'm going to flip this over and trim these pieces. If you notice, I'm not going up close to the wood. I'm just trying to get this excess out of my way and capture some scraps that I might be able to use on the tail. Now this has to dry. While the heart dries, we can go ahead and trim this one the same way we did the heart. We're just going to take scissors and cut around All right. So this still needs to dry fully, and the reason is we've saturated the paper somewhat with the glue and water mixture. And the paper, if it's still damp, when you try to cut it with the hobby knife, will snag and tear and you won't get a clean cut. So we want to wait until that's completely dry. We can do plenty of things while that's waiting to dry. It's like cleaning up. I tend to save scraps that are a little bit larger, especially if I like the paper, but smaller ones I let go. There's just not a whole lot to it. But these, if you especially, I mean, look how fun this one is. Let's make a great pair of earrings. And we've got a great jewelry class that shows you just how to do that. So clean up this area just a little bit. We are ready to, we're waiting for this to dry, and we can go ahead and get the back of these pieces painted while we wait for the front to dry. Let's pick out a color. So we want to paint the backs of these. Depending upon where you're displaying this, nobody may ever see the back. And this heart is only about an inch away from the cat when it's on the display. But to me, it feels more finished when it's done. So let's find a color that we like that kind of goes with what we're doing here. I'm thinking, I just happen to have some other colors here. Maybe this blue, or that green is not going to work for this one. Let's go with the blue. It should blend in pretty well with everything else we got going on. And if it doesn't, we can always change it. So here we go. We're going to paint. I'm not going to make you watch me paint in real time, so we'll be speeding up the video. Before we paint this one, we can go ahead and attach our support piece. The support piece is a little funky looking, but it does what it's supposed to do. It matches up at the bottom and at the sides and at this inside. So there's a little doohickey here and a little doohickey here that helps support the tail. But the purpose of this is to hold the top to the bottom. So we're going to glue this together. It won't take very long for that to set up. And then we can continue painting the back. In fact, we can actually start at the head, and by the time we get down there, the clamp can come off. A note about painting this tail. So the tail is only attached to the wood here, so it's a little fragile. When you're painting it, make sure it's supported. So either paint it directly down on the table, or if you're painting it on your hand, support it with your hand. Don't paint way up here and just let it be flimsy. Painting is complete. I'm going to set this aside to dry. And take a moment to clean up my workspace. The heart has been drying while we were painting the cat, and this was the last thing we glued, but it's feeling pretty good. So we're going to learn how to trim this. We're going to take a hobby knife, self-healing mat, and we're going to follow along the edges of the wood. There's a couple of things to keep in mind here. You don't want to undercut, so you don't want your blade at an angle angling into the base. You want to be as straight as possible, or if you have to, angle out. But the undercut will cause a really odd look on the front edge. So as straight as possible, and we're just going to follow the wood along, let the wood be a guide. Sometimes you'll cut into the wood. It's no big deal. Just back up, start again. I'm not quite next to that, so I'm going to go a little bit closer. Again, trying not to undercut. There we go. For these rounded edges, follow as straight as you can for as long as you can, but don't do the curve. Just keep going with straight cuts. It seems weird, but it works. You will occasionally end up with a sharp corner like that. Just go back and trim it off. So the front, well, that side's obviously, the front, there's a little bit of a mark right there, and sure enough, I can see that right here. Part of my problem is trying to keep it so that you can see what I'm doing in the camera. There we go. That side's done. For the inside corner, leave this for last. Go ahead and notch this stuff out, and let's go ahead and keep going. Again, straight cuts. Straight cuts. In this corner, turn around. Anything that just is a little awkward, just cut it again. Perfect. All right, so for these inside corners, you want to cut in as far as you can go. And that one came right out. So in as far as you can go, and then flip to the front and use your knife and cut down. You don't want to pull from back to front because your paper might tear. So make the scores, flip it over, and cut to the front. We have a couple other turns coming up, so we'll be able to do that. So this one is done. I'm going to ink the edges because I'm an inked edge girl. I think it gives it a finished look. You could also, if you didn't like this particular color, you could do a different color ink. You could use a gold leafing pen. You could even dry brush paint the edges, so that would take a little bit of work. For this inside corner, this is a cute little Velcro thing. Grab the ink and put it right in the middle. This part is done. While we're waiting for this to get fully dry, let's plan our base. The base is going to sit, the cat sits here, and this sits in front. So for the bottom, I'm thinking that we're gonna probably need to bring this green in, something a little more neutral to offset all these pops of color. And then the blue is the very bottom, and that would be a continuation from the top. So, which is not even on camera because this project is so big. So I'm thinking green for the base with the blue trim, because that will tie in from the top. So what we're gonna do is the top piece. This is right side up. This is not, you can tell because it has these little scorch marks from where the wood was burned. So this is what we're going to glue the paper to. You can also choose to paint the base. I would rather just go ahead and put this paper on it. So I'm going to line this up over here. Just cut myself off a section. And I am going to glue this to this. This, all you're going to see is this 1 inch here. And I love the back of this paper and want to save it for another project. So I'm just going to do strips of this. So here's what I'm going to do. And this is just so that I can conserve this beautiful paper. I'm going to cut 1 inch strips. And I'm going to piece them along as we go. So the kitty cat is dry. We're going to flip it over and we're going to start trimming. We can't do the tail until we get this out of our way anyway. So we're going to go ahead and get this set up. We need our sharp edge, our straight edge, and we're just going to pick a spot and start. And again, we're not trying to undercut. We want to go as straight as possible. Get those pieces out of our way. And for the curves, just take a straight line out, and we'll go back and clean up any pointy edges. All right, for inside here, if the paper is overlapping, which is not at this point, and keep in mind that this isn't even glued because it's not part of the tail. We can technically come in here follow this tail line around and I went a little too far in, but we know what fixes that, right? The Sharpie. All right. Love the way the heart came out in the middle there. That was fortuitous with this paper. All right, I'm going to clean up these scraps and then we're going to start working on our tail.